Our ballot language, even though 1% of the funding goes to senior transportation, says for seniors, veterans, and the disabled. The language was offensively misleading. They promised routes to Clarkston. They promised routes to Oxford. They promised routes down the Western Lakes region. None of them exist.
And now they're asking for how much money?
They're asking for $570 million, $57 million a year for 10 years.
It's almost beyond belief.
And turns out they held effectively a secret meeting. They did the absolute minimum amount of notice, which in this case was taking the piece of paper and slapping it on the wall in the Guardian building in downtown Detroit. And if you happen to be lucky enough to see it in the 18-hour period that the law requires, congratulations, you'll know when the meeting is. Otherwise, sorry. The average number of people on a bus at any given time throughout the entire system is irrefutably, mathematically, 3.88. 3.8. The average bus has less than 4 people. The subsidy is 97%.
Oh my
3% of their money comes from fares. The rest is from the taxpayer.
So thanks for coming on the show, Matt. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. Doing great.
Awesome.
On this hot summer day.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful outside, but it is warm. We're in the full swings of Michigan summer.
Absolutely.
So you've been working on something for quite some time now. Why don't you just take a second, introduce yourself to our audience, and kind of give the top view of what it is that you've been working on.
So my name is Matt Wilk. I am the organizer of a group called Not Smart Wayne. We've been working on the potential expansion of the smart system through a millage that ultimately is going to be on the ballot in August. So to take everyone back, between 1994 and 2004, communities in Wayne County, including the city of Detroit, had the right to opt out of the smart system. They could choose to participate or not, and something like 23 communities opted in.
Okay.
Many, however, including the city of Detroit, representing over 1 million people, had opted out. Okay, so fast forward to lame duck 2024. We've had that big news about the 9 bills that weren't sent along and vetoed. This was one of the ones that was at the last minute and was signed. House Bill 6088 took away that right and said, now, next millage up, it's all or nothing. So we were sort of tracking, but this is myself and just a bunch of grassroots activists in the area. We were sort of tracking sort of what was going to happen with that. We stood in opposition to the law. Nobody listened. The mayor of Livonia was against the law. The township supervisor of Canton Township was against the law. Nobody listened. They passed it anyway. Starting about the end of 2025, we started hearing from people in elected positions, mayors, township supervisors, etc., that they were hearing from Wayne County about what was going to happen. And then about February of 2025, there was a release of a document called the Wayne County Transit Evaluation, and Warren Evans, the executive of Wayne County, at his state of the county said, this is very important, this is what we're doing, and it will be on the ballot in August. Okay, which was a neat trick because in order to put it on the ballot, you have to go through something called the Wayne County Transit Authority. We knew they hadn't met. They only meet about once a year, and they only meet for the sole purpose of taxing us. It's one of these great entities. It does one thing. It taxes us. It collects the money. It sends it to SMART. And for those who don't know, SMART is the Tri-County system. It includes Oakland, Macomb, and parts of Wayne. Detroit has its own system called DDOT. DDOT is not a part of SMART. So we started digging into sort of what was going on with this system and then the process by which this was going to go on the ballot. And every time we turned over a rock, it was something worse and worse and worse, and it coalesced into this movement that we have that is working to defeat the millage.
So I want to go back to something you said kind of close to the beginning, is you had the mayor of Livonia and a lot of locals and all these people basically saying, we don't want this bill, we don't want this law. And it just reminded me of a few weeks ago, you may have seen this, the governor on a hot mic saying, we're used to people saying no and doing it anyway. Right. And it seems like this is just another one of those examples of, some people not really caring about local control or what the local communities want, and just trying to we know better than you. This is a good thing. Have you gotten a lot of that sort of energy in this process for people?
Absolutely. Any one of these communities at any point over the last 30 years could have voluntarily opted in. No one had. One community, in fact, Livonia, was opted in between 1994 and 2005. Finally, then Mayor Jack Kirksey said, this doesn't work for us. And he put it on the ballot to let the voters vote, and they voted to opt out of the system. They have their own system called Live and Go, which really is more for seniors. I guess it's been opened up to people over the age of 18. A lot of communities have their own senior transit. This is not that. This is about the big fixed bus lines that go up and down our streets. And so, to a great extent, they just simply didn't listen. They wanted their shiny toy, and their shiny toy is this tri-county transit system that, as it turns out, not a lot of people use.
So another question that I have, just based on your intros, you mentioned that the city of Detroit currently has its own bus system. So let's say August comes and goes and this millage passes. How will SMART integrate with? Is it just going to be duplicative efforts? Like, do you have any idea of what the game plan is going to be there?
You've raised a very interesting question. So what they are saying out loud is that, don't worry, Detroiters, you will get the money back that the Wayne County Transit Authority collects from the city of Detroit. Being familiar enough with the rules, I filed a FOIA to find out, do you have an agreement? Do you have something in writing that says that? That would be a neat trick, because the Wayne County Transit Authority did not meet and approve such a thing. And the answer was, there are no documents responsive to your request. There is no deal. They are telling Detroiters what's going to happen is their money is going to go to Detroit. But to understand, to touch on the city of Detroit very, very briefly, 650-some thousand people are facing a double tax. They are already taxed as a part of their 19 mills for DDOT and its operations. Oh, by the way, its operations, when we get into it, have substantially higher metrics than SMART does. And there's arguments about whether they should do more DDOT or less DDOT or rearrange DDOT or whatever they're doing. But it's a very broad system, and it covers basically every mile road and every north-south road. And there's a lot of effort put into it because a big portion of Detroiters don't own cars. They rely on it much more heavily. But there's no agreement to have the SMART give their portion of the money to Detroit. It works out to about $9.5 million a year. There's no agreement to do that. So DDOT is its own separately funded system. Detroiters will be double taxed. And are they going to get some money back? No one knows.
Wow. So can we talk a little bit, too, about, you mentioned this Wayne County Transit Authority. They meet once a year. The Wayne County Executive, Warren Evans, just sort of made this proclamation that this millage was going to be on the ballot. Do you have any details about how that all came to be?
Sadly, yes.
Okay.
So what happened was I had filed a FOIA originally saying, I'd like to know who's on this board, when do they meet, when's their next meeting, can I get minutes of past meetings? And I got back some of the information, and the information about when's the next meeting, it said no documents responsive to your request. We're like, okay, great. They haven't scheduled anything yet. Then we see on Twitter from an account that is a pro bus tax account saying, congratulations, everyone. This will be on the millage in August. The Wayne County Transit Authority voted to do so. And we said, what? Wait, we asked for that. What do you mean? And turns out they held effectively a secret meeting. They did the absolute minimum amount of notice, which in this case was taking the piece of paper and slapping it on the wall in the Guardian building in downtown Detroit. The Wayne County Transit Authority at that point did not even have a website. So it had sprinklings of it through their own website. And they met and took one action and approved it and put it on the ballot. No, they somehow magically pro-bus people were attending the meeting, probably because my understanding is one of their members works for Wayne County in this field. Yeah, so that's how he found out and brought people along. We ultimately filed suit. Filing suit against Wayne County in Wayne County doesn't often get you a good result. It did not give us a good result because the judge was put in a box because we had filed a FOIA saying, hey, give us the information that we need for this. What's the language say? The ballot language is another huge issue, hugely deceptive issue. The judge ultimately said, no, they did the legal minimum. That's all they have to do. So in today's day and age where everything is on your phone and everything is on a computer, it is sufficient by the rule of this judge for notice of a public meeting to be slapped on the wall of a building of one of Wayne County's, 7, 8, 9 buildings. And if you happen to be lucky enough to see it in the 18-hour period that the law requires, congratulations, you'll know when the meeting is. Otherwise, sorry.
Jeez. Have you ever seen the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I don't think I have.
Okay, there's this great... They're tearing down this guy's house. That's how the movie starts. They're bulldozing it so they can build a highway. And he's laying in front of the bulldozer, and they keep saying, well, we provided you proper notice. And proper notice was on a bulletin board in the basement of the City Hall office. And it basically said, if you would have ever gone into the City Hall office on a random day and walked down the stairs into the basement and looked at the bulletin board in the back of the basement, then you would have known we were tearing down your house. And it just feels very similar
so
to
if
me.
you go online and you say, where is Wayne County headquartered? They come up with 2 buildings. They come up with the city-county building. Fair. Notice is all over the wall on that. They come up with the admin building in Greektown, 400 Monroe. Not there. It's in the Guardian building, and it's in a nook off to the side of the elevators. And after I did this, I walked over to the staff and I said, I'd like to know about the Wayne County Transit Authority. And they went, no, but I don't know where they are. Like they literally at the point did not have an address. They don't have an office. There was nowhere to even serve them legal documents. That's how bad it was. And that is exactly the problem, is they're not making an effort to try to engage people. I want to hear what you have to say, even if you're going to conclude the other way.
Right.
Even if you're going, I heard what you said, but I find differently. That's better than I'm going to actively try to make sure you don't participate. Okay, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I can think of that they even want to participate in that way is because they're nervous about what people would have to say.
I think that's right.
They just don't want to deal with any potential pushback. They are trying to circumvent what local townships, local cities, what the people in the community might actually want. And so rather than listen to their interests, they're just going to say, we're going to make it so hard to make your voice heard that we don't have to listen to it.
And additionally, as we're finding out, their messaging is predicated on there being no one to contradict it.
Right.
Right. They say things that are ultimately wrong.
Right.
And in some cases, demonstrably and provably wrong. And the only way it works is if there's nobody saying the emperor is wearing no clothes.
Right.
Because as soon as they do, everyone uses their eyes and they see what we see. And we're hearing a lot of people saying, yeah, we think you're right.
Can you give an example of that, of
Sure.
one of these things that they're just
Okay,
completely off base about?
I'll give you a great example. So the first question we asked in this analysis that we did was, how many people are on the average bus? Okay, it's an interesting question. So the Smart on their website proudly proclaims that they had about 48.5 million passenger miles. Okay, but what's a passenger mile?
Right.
100 passenger miles could be 100 people going 1 mile, one person going 100 miles, or anything in between. You don't know unless you have another number. Well, it turns out they don't report that other number on their website or on their reports, but they do report it to the federal government.
Okay.
There's a federal Department of Transportation called an annual agency profile that requires you to have the other number, which they call vehicle revenue miles. That's when so not buses out of service. It's basically like your odometer.
Okay.
So if you knew your odometer rolled by 100 and you had 480 passenger miles, you'd know 1 divided by other, whatever is 4.8. In this particular case, the average number of people on a bus at any given time throughout the entire system is irrefutably, mathematically, 3.88. 3.8. The average
Wow.
bus has less than 4 people. So a lot of what they say is predicated on, oh, our buses are full. And there'll be always one person, I take the 156 and it's full. And the reality is the average bus is 3.88 people by math. And now people see it with their eyes. When they see a smart bus roll by, they look, and they look to see how many people are in the bus. And the answer is, most of the time, it's empty.
And so how much, do you know at the top of your head how much right now the communities who are opted in, how much they're paying?
They're paying, give or take, 30-some million annually for the opt-ins in Wayne County. That's correct.
For 3.88 people per bus?
3.88 people per bus is across the whole system. The numbers are worse. So
oh, my goodness.
Every time we turn over a rock, these numbers got worse.
Right.
What does it cost, smart, to move one person 1 mile? The answer is a little bit more than $3.70. So for a person, let's say I'm a bus taker and I take the bus 10,000 miles a year, it costs smart $37,000 to do that. $37,000.
And now they're asking for how much money?
They're asking for $570 million, $57 million a year for 10 years.
It's almost beyond belief.
Beyond belief. Now, I do caveat all this by saying my co-organizer, she tells a very touching story. She is the daughter of 2 Greek immigrants. They moved to Michigan in the 1950s, and for the longest time, they did not own a car. Her mom didn't have a driver's license. Her dad took the bus from St. Clair Shores down to Detroit, to American Coney Island, to work for the Quiros family. And that's how he got started in America. There are uses for it. There are people who need it. That we understand that. But when you have primarily empty buses running up and down streets, you're not helping. You're trying to play. You're trying to show, like, we have a bus system, even though no one uses it.
Right.
Are there more efficient ways to help that person go from place to place? Are there more, can it be at a lower cost? For sure.
Right.
For sure. That's not what they're focusing on. That's not what the money's for.
So it sounds like for this expansion, the local municipalities didn't want it. That's why they didn't opt in the first place. And then furthermore, there's not even really the demand for it.
There certainly isn't the demand for it. We actually had the opportunity to sit through a couple of presentations. The Western Wayne communities got together and hired a consultant. And basically the consultant's task was, if the buses are going to be expanded, where would they be? Where would people want them? And I've seen this presentation now twice, and both times the presenter would say, this is what SMART came up with, and the city officials would say, but we would really like this.
Right.
And they would say, sorry, no. Like, one of them was getting people from Northville and Plymouth to the airport directly. No, don't have that. Sorry. So they didn't. That wasn't their goal. So they laid out this map, and we can get into that. And the map had all these buses going through these ridiculous locations, like a bus going from Novi down through downtown Northville. If you've ever been to downtown Northville, the streets are closed half the time, and oh, by the way, they're super tight. And then the bus kind of weaves around. It drives on Hines Drive, which is closed for much of the year because of bad weather, and then it goes through downtown Plymouth. It's insane. It isn't the type of transportation that members of that community use or want. Are there other possibilities? Sure, but I will say this. You can't motivate a government agency to fix things by shoveling $570 million into their lap. They're just going to expand what they're doing.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I mean, where's the incentive for them to change if you're just going to,
Yeah, there is not.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, especially people who are really interested in fiscal responsibility and really interested in the government spending the money that they collect well, they're not necessarily against public transportation. They see that there's value in people being able to get to work and get to school and get to the doctor's office. But when there's no transparency in how the government's going to raise their taxes and then spend their money, I mean, let alone what we just discussed about the end product, not really being popular either, but the fact that it doesn't really feel like they had any say in this being put on the ballot in August to begin with.
Well, no rational person would do things this way.
Right.
So another number that we were looking into. So you've heard a lot of conversations about roads funding. And we hear a lot from people, especially some of the pro-transit people who use the roads should pay for the roads. Okay, so we did the math. What is the roads subsidy in the state of Michigan? Take all of roads funding, subtract fuel taxes, and subtract ridiculous auto registration fees. And the answer you get is give or take around 17%. About 17% of that comes from a subsidy. Okay. What's the SMART subsidy? What percentage of SMART's revenue comes from fares? The subsidy is 97%.
Oh my goodness.
3% of their money comes from fares. The rest is from the taxpayer. The average bus fare is about $1.05. Okay? How much would that bus fare have to be if the fare payers had to pay their own way? The answer is $33 a bus ride.
Jeez.
There are problems. There are solutions. That is not one of them.
Right.
That is not one of them.
Right. Wow. I saw something else too, and I think this was something that you had posted about the advocates for this millage talking about how it was supposed to pay for senior transportation.
Yes.
And I wonder, could you clarify what that's about for folks?
Sure. So most communities in Wayne County have their own senior transportation programs. I live in Northville. Ours is called Northville Connections. I used to sit on my senior advisory board and on the Parks and Rec Commission. We happily subsidize it. It's a little mini bus, and if people want to go to the doctor, they want to go to the mall or whatever, it's $1 or $3 or $5. And there's a lot of time and energy put into where is it going to run? What are the hours? How's it going to go? Lots of communities do as well. Livonia has Live and Go. Plymouth has Plymouth Senior Transit. Downriver, they have a whole bunch of these things. So again, going back to every time we turn over a rock, it was something worse. How much of the $57 million is going to be allocated to those senior transit programs? The answer is $550,000, less than 1%. Notwithstanding that, the pro-bus tax people have put out flyers saying this is for senior transit. Going back to the original purpose of our lawsuit, one part of it was the failure to disclose. The other part was that there is no check on the ballot language at the local level. Okay. So if you want to do a ballot initiative in the state of Michigan, you can draft your petition language, you send it to the state, they look at it, but the ultimate language that goes on the ballot comes from the Bureau of Elections. Right, and they are going to try to play it as fair as they can. And there's a lot of discussion, haggling, and give or take on that language. There is no equivalent at the county level. So our ballot language, even though 1% of the funding goes to senior transportation, says for seniors, veterans, and the disabled. Seniors, veterans, and the disabled. There's no veterans program.
Right.
And look, I tell people I took care of my dad in about the last 5 years of his life.
Right.
He had a really hard time getting around. He can't get on a bus.
Yeah.
This is for the disabled. There is paratransit, but that's a different thing.
Right.
And this is for 1%. But they know it's their best argument. It's their only argument. This is for seniors. It's not for seniors.
They're trying to tug on people's heartstrings.
If you go back, we had the wonderful opportunity to write an op-ed in one of the leading business magazines in the state. And our op-ed was right next to an op-ed, a pro op-ed. And what was fascinating was just look at the article and see how many numbers they use. We had numbers throughout this whole thing. They didn't have any. It's really important to people. It helps our economy grow. It does this. It does that. By the way, that statement, it helps our economy grow. It helps development grow. I had to look into that. I had to check that. And it turns out it's a study study, air quotes, in something called, I think, the Journal of Transit and Development. Like, I'm sure those are completely unbiased reviewers who are coming to the conclusion that transit leads to development. It doesn't. It doesn't. Everybody, well, I'll just ask you this. In Wayne County, the communities that did not have transit, how did their development compare to the communities that did? It's it's a complete dichotomy. So the language was offensively misleading.
Yeah.
And but that's all they got. All they got is go after seniors.
Which that's kind of interesting to me because they're really telling two different stories in a lot of ways. Because I know some pro bus tax people, not necessarily the specific tax, but just kind of in general. And a lot of the time, what they're trying to sell is universal access. Like that is their top of the bill. But when it comes to actually getting people to choose to raise their taxes, they're trying to make it sound like it's an exclusive service for seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So they're telling two competing stories. I'm sure at their meetings, when they're talking about how great they are in this new bus tax, they're selling each other the story of we're going to make sure everybody can ride this subsidized bus. But what they're telling the voters is that it's this niche service to try to really...
Yeah. I lived in Chicago for 6 years. I took the L to work. One of the things it's predicated on is a dense urban core where I lived. In the 1950s, Detroit had 13,500 people per square mile. Now it's quite a bit less than half of that. And it's approaching suburban lack of density. It doesn't work in suburban communities. It never has. It wasn't designed for that. But we have these, and it's almost, what was fascinating is somebody pointed out to me, again, my co-organizer pointed out to me, she said, you know, they want us to use all these forms of transportation that we stopped using. Right. They want us to take a bike, and they want us to take a streetcar, and they want us to take a bus and a train. And I'm like, yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah. What they don't want you to take is the automobile.
Right.
And
in the Motor City.
In the Motor City.
Yeah.
In the Motor City. Could we come up with, in the Motor City, a better way to move people who need to move from point A to point B? You betcha.
Yeah.
But there is no, this is not what they're doing. And when you start to dig in, there's another one we found that was just unbelievable. So they've run around town with these maps. This is what this is going to go for. Great. Awesome. So we said to ourselves, I wonder what they promised in 2022 in Oakland County when this was on the ballot. And we found it. We found the map that they ran around town with, including a video of a pro-transit person with the map saying, look at this, isn't this great? This is what we're going to get. And then we compared it to what's been delivered 4 years later. They promised routes to Clarkston. They promised routes to Oxford. They promised routes down the Western Lakes region. None of them exist. About a half of what they promised exists. And the story that we were told was, well, it takes 3 or 4 years to buy a bus. It does? Okay, I got an idea. How about you put the order in for the bus and then you take our money when it arrives, like every other normal thing would be. Not, we'll give you the money, you hold on to it, or in this case, spend it in a different way, and then maybe you'll have some when the bus arrives.
Right.
It's complete nonsense. Again,
so it's not even just that they took away these communities' abilities to opt out.
Correct.
They're saying you have to either vote yes or no, and everybody's going to be in this millage if it passes.
Correct.
They're also saying, we're going to promise that if you do vote yes, we'll provide service to your community, and you just have to trust us.
And not only do you have to trust us, you have to trust us, and the report says these things are going to be rolled out over a 4-year period. And if you look at the last 4 years ago, that they didn't meet their promises. And the best part was when I made this comment, Dave Woodward chimed in. Dave Woodward is the chair of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, and he said, oh, you're all full of lies. And we said, hello, Dave. Nice to see you. Thanks for chiming in on my post. Could you please point to me where anything we've said is wrong? We'd be happy to correct it. We deliver different things. Okay, that's breaking your promise.
Right.
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 When you tell me I can take a bus up to Clarkston or Oxford or through the Western Lakes region, and 4 years later it's not there, you're not building the roads. You're buying a vehicle and
Right.
putting a driver in it.
Right.
And they happily collected the money, and they said flat out, "Oh well, sorry." And under SMART, it's the same thing. So they're going around town with these maps, and then you ask them, is this an agreement? Is this fixed? Is this in writing? Well, no, these are just concepts and plans. Who does that benefit? That benefits you, so you can change your mind later. And so that was a fascinating one. So that when you see these things, and SMART has started to roll them out, we quickly just show that, because we made a map and say, here's the 2022 promises, and then here's what you didn't deliver. And it's hard for people to look and say, here's the same fancy map you've given me, showing bus lines going here, there, and everywhere, but you didn't deliver it 4 years ago in Oakland County. Why? And what makes you think we trust you now?
I mean, it's got to be frustrating for a lot of people that this sort of overpromise, underdeliver. I mean, it's sort of endemic to government, but it seems like it's really prevalent in the public transportation space. It sort of reminds me of the California high-speed rail.
Yes.
I know it's obviously not the same, but there just seems like this parallel where we're going to take all this money from the taxpayers, we're going to spend it, and how many people have hopped on a train in California?
Yeah.
Zero?
Zero.
I mean,
Zero.
So I don't know what the issue is there where...
I will tell you, because they've said it in some of their stuff. They've said, well, ridership's not the goal. It's not? What is the goal? The goal is to provide coverage. So their goal is to have an empty bus drive back and forth along Grand River Avenue, and they're happy to do it. And it's just a nonsensical view of how government should work.
Yeah.
And it only works when that's pulled away from the local.
Right.
Okay? There's an adage about government. The government is most responsive the closer you live to where the decisions are made.
Right.
Okay? So you're talking about your local community. They're going to listen, because if you're giving them tax dollars, and for like my community, if you're giving them tax dollars and there's a bridge out that Wayne County was supposed to pay for 4 years along 8 Mile that they finally got to this year, you're starting to, ask questions. Where's my money? Why isn't this not done? Let's take a little further away at the county level. Wayne County's not going to listen to us. They don't listen to us now.
Right.
Why would they listen to us about bus? Lansing, Washington, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That money's gone.
Right.
As you know, you guys have been very big on this for very many years. It's very difficult to get the average public employee to think in terms of efficiency.
Right.
And delivery. How do I measure how well I did? I, plowed this many street for this dollars, and next year I want to plow more streets for fewer dollars. They don't look at it that way.
Right.
So in this case, we have a bus system, again, $3.70 a mile. The buses average 3.88 people on them. And their solution, this is what they think is going to help solve this problem, is more money for more buses.
Right. And, I think I don't want to get too into the weeds here just on kind of the theory of of how this stuff should work. But I think a lot of people, when they look at things like the state budget, or they look at things like, their property taxes and how their spending is going, and I think they don't realize that there's just this disconnect between how the government can view tax dollars and public policy and how they do. And it's this efficiency thing, but it's also this, there's a lot of folks who really try to make public policy at the margins. So transportation people see 10 people in a community who don't have what they would think of as adequate access to busing, and so they need to revolutionize the bus system for these 10 people.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with the regulatory environment. People will look at the stacks of government regulations we have, and they'll say, how could we get to this place? And it's like, well, this agency was trying to solve a problem that's a problem for 6 people, and so they did an industry-wide regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And those all just start to stack. And so when we look at out-of-control spending in Wayne County and Ingham County at the state level, it's all of these small programs that just start to stack up because they're trying to solve for the smallest issues.
And it's we never go back and take another look at it.
Right.
So we are in today's day and age. You have a phone, I have a phone. We both have Uber on our phone. We press a button, and a computer makes the most efficient calculation to allow you to go from point A to point B.
Right.
But for our buses, we have a bus running up and down a main street and with a certain schedule that they may or may not adhere to. And in Michigan, nearly the 45th parallel, where it's cold for 6 months out of the year, we're going to ask someone to stand outside and wait for a bus.
Right.
We know there are more efficient solutions. The only thing I can conclude for some of this is for some of the people, it's simply a jobs program.
Right.
It's simply a job. I talked to a person who is connected with this in Oakland County. He said to me, well, they have those accordion buses. So the buses that are already empty, we're going to make them twice as long. And I said, yeah. He said, do you know why? And I said, no, I don't. And he says, because it's a promotion. Because the licensing to drive a accordion bus is more complicated than a regular bus, so they can offer promotions to their people. It's nonsensical. And again,
oh my goodness.
It doesn't. The average person doesn't view that. I don't view someone that I hire to do someone else. I'm doing it's not a jobs program. I'm not happy if they're just there but not working.
Right.
I think at the government level, oftentimes it is. And the problem that I have with that is that there are people who have needs that could be solved if the system worked better.
Right.
I was taking care of my dad. He had a hard time getting around.
Yeah.
He could not use any transportation. You know why? Because they don't have anybody to help load and unload my dad. He couldn't get up the stairs very easily. So unless I wanted to go with him, in which case, what's the point? I'll drive him there.
Right.
Right? Now, could you solve that problem if you reallocated empty bus resources to that better? Sure.
Right.
Sure. But what did they decide to do? 1%.
Right. We were talking about this just before you had gotten here. Is one of the things that's really frustrating for a lot of citizens is when we do our budgets at home, when we look at how we're going to spend money, we make choices. The amount of money stays largely the same, and sometimes we decide, even for things that are really just for fun or for entertainment, we make choices to pay for one thing over another thing. But at the government level, that almost seems impossible for them. They never really say, well, look, you know what? We want to expand smart buses in Wayne County, so we're going to take money from this program and give it to the smart buses program. It's always about raising more money. It's always about increasing the budget and increasing the funding.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because in Detroit, DDOT is funded from local taxes that are part of the general fund. They have that conversation all the time.
Right.
And the results are, hey, how can we be more efficient to deliver what we need? Because if we don't use the money here, we can use it there.
Right.
The other thing that you see, which is fascinating, is how do you measure what you've done? Government universally measured its success, as it were, on expenditures.
Right.
It's like if I'm not married any longer, but if my wife came home and said, "Congratulations, I spent $15,000," like, congratulations, wait,
Yeah,
what?
right.
It's the other way around. Tell me what you got.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, I like that, but don't tell me how much you spent.
Right.
But when you see somebody talk about roads, what do they say? We invested $500 million in the roads.
Right.
What did it get me?
Right.
What
exactly.
did it, and no other business, no other organization, no other anything
Right.
Works that way. And interestingly, I used to sit on my school board, and I was the school board treasurer. The local school board does have to make those decisions because we do have a fixed sum of money. We can't print our own money, and we can't go back to the taxpayer for more, with the exception of bonds for buildings and stuff like that. So when we're saying, do we want to pay for more salaries or more health care or more staff, those all play into a number, and you got to make those tough decisions.
Right.
So when you go to hire someone, you say, do I want that person, or do I want another person, or do I want more healthcare coverage, or do I want to give everyone a salary boost, because they're all the same pot.
Right.
The further you get, the more it is just, well, we want to spend your money.
Right.
Which is what they're doing here, $570 million.
$570 million. All right.
$500 million once you start calculating.
Yeah.
What was the other
What's
one?
the saying? A million here, a million there, and eventually it adds up to real money.
Well, this is another thing that we came to. We see often. So we concluded the buses have 3.88 people on them. Everyone now knows it. They're all looking for it and they see it. What it took away is all of the standard conversation points around transit. Standard conversation points around transit were traffic and like pollution and stuff like that. Well, it turns out a bus is 3 times as long as a car. So when you take 3.88 people off the road and put them on a bus, you actually make it worse. Buses are slower to react. They can't turn. They got to stop at railroad crossings. Okay. A bus is 6 times as heavy as a car. So a bus with 3.88 people on it, taking 3 cars off the road, that's twice as many potholes.
Right.
Buses emit 6 to 10 times the emissions as cars. So when we tell people about this, the facts we're laying out are about the number of people on the buses. Yeah. They don't have the downstream effects. The big one is the seniors.
Right.
In their own budget, in their own words, $550 million. I was at a function this weekend, and I had the opportunity to listen to Assad Turfi talk about it, and I asked him the specific question. This was Livonia. Livonia's tax to Livonians is $5.5 million a year, $55 million over the course of the thing. I said, how much of that money is going to go to Live and Go? That's their senior transit. And he tried to dance around. He was with a councilwoman, and the answer was effectively none. No more money. $500,000 across, not $500,000 for Livonia, $500,000 across the entire county.
Jeez.
So your community might get 10 or 15 or 20,000 bucks. Yet they put a flyer out saying this is for seniors.
And that's how it's advertised in the ballot.
That's how it's on the ballot. So we're letting people know. I am hoping that the undertow that I am feeling, which is a lot more people across party lines, very broadly, are starting to pay attention to taxes, property taxes in particular.
Yeah.
I think they may look at this and say, that's not really a good use of our money.
Right.
Let's figure out a better way. Let's figure out something else. In this case, their revenue is $188 million a year as it is right now.
Right.
You can't move around people at $3.70 a mile. You know what you can do? You can give them a car
Right.
at that price.
Right.
But again, not when you're doing it that way. So,
and the irony, I think, too, of saying that all of this is for seniors is that it's a lot of seniors on fixed incomes who are going to be paying the tax.
Correct.
Like, these are the people who are really struggling already with the weight of property taxes and how it just feels like they keep going up and they keep going up. And you're going to give them less than 1% of the value
Right.
of...
Which you could do a million different ways and do it entirely better. And many communities do.
Yeah.
That's what they need to sell it, and that's them pulling at the heartstrings. We'll see if the voters see through it.
Awesome.
Well, we've compiled everything into our website. It's at notsmartwayne.org, and all of our information is on there. After the lawsuit, Wayne County decided that, maybe we'll put together a transit authority website. We said to the world, thank you, right? Or you're welcome, whatever. And we really encourage people to get in front of your local government because they hear things and they have the ability to push back. We have spoken in front of, maybe half a dozen local governments on this issue. And a lot of times the reaction is simply shock.
Yeah.
Because no one's told them this before. And being involved in local politics, and I have been for over a decade, you can effectuate change. You can get policies changed because you raise your hand and say, hey, I can think of a better way. Because especially at the local level, a lot of these people are trying to solve a problem. They see a problem and they want to solve it, and they can find a better way to do so. They're going to do it. I give an example. I used to sit at my school board, and we had a problem with our elementary school was rolling over into 8 Mile, causing traffic backups. So we hired a guy. He came on. He redesigned the parking lot and whatever. At the end of the meeting, the citizen stands up. It's for citizen comments. He says, hi, my name's so-and-so. Your plan is entirely wrong, and I know because I'm a traffic flow engineer, and I'd be happy to redesign your parking lot for free. And we said, stop, come on up. And he did. And it was miraculous. I have no idea why this worked. But somehow all that traffic got sucked in off of 8 Mile. No longer people waiting. Kids are safer. It was amazing. Local people can solve these problems. That's the miracle of the United States of America, is we concluded that being in royalty provided you no special knowledge or expertise. And the people that do know are the locals and the local voters, because they have an incentive to try to figure out how to do it the best way, because it affects them every day. So if anyone's listening to this and they haven't gotten involved, maybe they're afraid, go in, raise that hand. Once you do it once, you'll love it. I sit on my planning commission. We had a lady who came in and she wanted to speak about a particular issue, and she decided she just liked coming to meetings. She wanted to hear what's going on in her community. And every meeting, we give her a nice welcome. We give her the microphone for her 3 minutes, and she'd tell us how she felt about things, and it was great. That's the way how it should work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure that you click the like button and subscribe. Follow Michigan Forward on all of our social channels so you can keep up to date on what's going on in Michigan and some government accountability stuff. And thank you so much, Matt, for being here to explain the Wayne County transit issue and the work that you've been doing.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. We could be found, notsmartwayne.org is the website. We're on Facebook at NotSmartWayne and at NotSmartWayne on Twitter.